Hi, today is February 6th, and we are walking through the Bible, answering questions. Who am I? Who is God? And what the heck are we doing together? Today we are referring to the passages in Exodus chapter 23, 14 through 25, 40, Matthew 24, 29 through 51, Psalm chapter 30, verse 1 through 12, and Proverbs chapter 7, 24 through 27. And in the Old Testament, in Exodus, Moses is continuing to meet with God on the mountain. And God is telling him what his plan is. And he has instituted holidays. He called them festivals. And there are 3 festivals. You must celebrate 3 festivals in my honor. 7 days without yeast in your bread. And that is to signify that he is a holy God, and the yeast is symbolic of sin. So the Jewish people, the Israelites, were instructed to get rid of all the yeast in their house for 7 days, and to remember that they are a holy people. Second, celebrate the festival of harvest, or the festival of Pentecost, and that is at the end of the harvest season. There is a time where you bring in the harvest, and then finally the festival of the final harvest, and that is the festival of shelters, and that's usually to remember that they were in tents for a long time. And God is a God of he uses our senses to help us to remember. So all of these festivals had food involved, and the tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles, they went outside and they stayed in temporary shelters. And it was all to help us remember what God has done and help Israel remember. And he said, I'm sending you help. I'm going to protect you on your journey. I'm going to give a terror. I'm going to have a terror sent ahead of you, create panic among all the people. Your enemies will turn and run. So he had a plan. God has a plan. And he's telling Israel, this is my plan. And he said, when you get to the promised land, and that's in Canaan, he's been promising generations that he's going to provide a land. And he said, I'm not going to give you the whole thing all at once, because you won't be able to keep the animals away, but I'm going to help you overcome them bit by bit. He said, make no treaties with them. This is in verse 32, or their gods. Don't compromise. Do not mix in with their population. And then the Lord instructed in chapter 24, Moses, come up here to me. Come and see. Come up here and meet with me. And then he went down to the people. Moses went down to the people, repeated all of the instructions. And again, they responded, we will obey. They didn't, but they meant to, I'm sure. And then the Lord made a covenant. And then there is a vision and a description of God in verse 10. There they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet there seemed to be a surface of brilliant blue, lapis lazuli, as clear as the sky itself. And then the nobles gazed on God, but he did not destroy them, because somewhere in the scriptures it says, if you can't look at me, if you look at my face, you will die, especially if you haven't been made holy. In fact, they ate a covenant meal, eating and drinking in his presence. His plan is to bring us back into his presence. He wants us to be like Adam and Eve and to have fellowship with him. He's saying, come to me, you'll see. Come to me, eat with me. Come to me, hear me. Come to me, see me. I want you to see me. I want you to know me. And then in verse 15, Moses climbed up the mountain, and the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled down on Mount Sinai for 6 days. On the 7th day, the Lord called Moses from inside the cloud. To the Israelites at the foot of the mountain, the glory of the Lord appeared at the summit like a consuming fire. There's a verse in Hebrews that says, my God is a consuming fire. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, and he was meeting with the God of Israel. And then God gives Moses the plan for the sanctuary and for the temple in the wilderness. He said, you must build this tabernacle and its furnishings exactly according to the pattern I will show you. Nothing different. I want you to do exactly what I tell you to do. And I was looking for a model of ourselves, body, soul, and spirit. And I, drew circles and squares and rectangles and did the research. And finally, I recognized the temple, the tabernacle in the wilderness, the pattern that God gave Moses is an exact pattern of us. The outer court, and if you can look up a picture of the wilderness tabernacle, the outer court is symbolic of our body, and the inner court is symbolic of our mind. And then the Holy of Holies is symbolic of our spirit. And there's only one way through. Our senses get through the body, and then our thoughts and our words get through the gate of our mind. And then spirit to spirit gets through in our spirit. And we are made in his image. We are created in the image of God. And there is... So God is giving us an exact replica of who we are, but also of the tabernacle that's in heaven. And so he's very, very specific and very detailed about how it's supposed to be done. So we go to Matthew 24. Jesus is still telling the disciples what's going to happen at the end of the age, at the church age. And then he said, all the peoples of the earth will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Power and great glory. This is God and us. We're going to see him. They will gather, the angels will gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. Then he says, heaven and earth will pass away and disappear, but my words will never disappear. He honors his word, and I think it's the Psalms that says, even above his name. People didn't realize, the end of the age, which I believe we are living in right now. And Jesus compares it to the time of Noah. When Noah was building an ark, everybody thought he was crazy. They didn't even know what rain was. And for Noah to say there's a flood coming and he's building this big ark, and, it's a huge boat, and he's saying to the people, you have to come in and get saved. And they're looking, and there's no clouds in the sky. They've never seen rain. And it sounded like a fairy tale to them. It sounded like that Noah was crazy. And, Jesus said that in the time of, just before tribulation, it's going to sound the same way to the people. They're going to be, the scripture says that they're going to be eating and drinking, and they're going to have parties and weddings. There's not going to be a warning outside of God tells his prophets, he tells his people what's going to happen before he judges the world and before bad things happen. And he said that they're going to be very surprised, and they are going to have an opportunity. Noah was preaching salvation. The church is preaching salvation, and people are like talk to the hand, and they're not hearing, they're not seeing, and they're just going on with their life because it's very important. That is more important to them. And this is the way it will be when the Son of Man comes. So keep watch. In verse 42, it says, you must keep watch, and, be ready at all times, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. Do you think Jesus is coming today? No? Well, that's a sign. He's coming. And we just have to keep looking for him to come. And again, in verse 47, Jesus says, I tell you the truth. I tell you the truth. So then we get to Psalms. I'm just so blessed by the Psalms. He talks about our relationship, and he says, the psalmist says, I will exalt you, Lord, for you rescued me. You refused to let my enemies triumph over me. O Lord, my God, I cried to you for help, and you restored my health. You brought me up from the grave, O Lord. You kept me from falling into the pit of death. And here's our God, a description of our God. Sing to the Lord, all you godly ones, praise his holy name, for his anger lasts only a moment. Yes, God does get angry. We like to say God's not angry with you. There is an anger, but it doesn't last very long. His favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may last through the night, but joy comes with the morning. And he says, your favor, O Lord, made me as secure as a mountain. Then you turned away from me and I was shattered. I cried out to you, O Lord. I begged the Lord for mercy, and he gave me mercy. You have turned my mourning into joyful dancing. This is in verse 11. You've taken away my clothes of mourning and clothed me with joy, that I might sing praises to you and not be silent. O Lord, my God, I will give you thanks forever. Proverbs chapter 7 again is saying, listen to me, my sons, listen to me. And this can also be to daughters. Don't let your heart stray towards sexual immorality. It's a sin against yourself. And it's a sin that will not there is a consequence for sexual sin. And God gives us boundaries, and it's like a flood water. If we go outside of the boundaries are in God's plan, man, woman, in marriage, a holy covenant that is extremely joyful. And there's so much more to it than just, what we see. So I want to encourage you to join me again tomorrow. And I pray and believe that you'll have an absolutely blessed day.